and welcome to this episode of The DOORhof is Always Open. Now in this episode I'm interviewing, well, somebody that's really special, Aaron Blaise. Now if you don't know Aaron Blaise, think about Disney, Brother Bear, Aladdin, Beauty and the Beast, and so much more. Now this guy is awesome with animation. So enjoy this interview with Aaron Blaise. Hey Aaron.
Hi, how are you?
Welcome to The DOORhof is Always Open.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Wow, Photoshop world.
Oh, you know what? This is my second one, and I love it. I've absolutely had a wonderful time.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? All the creativity.
It is. It's I was in a studio environment for 24 years, and now I work independently. So I really miss that interaction that I get with other artists and collaborators and that sort of thing. So to be able to do something like this is great. And it's. Because photography, I'm assuming is, because I'm not a photographer, that's not my trade, but I'm assuming it's much like what I go through, where you work so much in a vacuum and you're kind of own little world where, it's not very often you get to get out and interact and exchange ideas with not just one or two people, but hundreds and hundreds of other people, which is, it's pretty cool. It gets really inspiring and you can go home with a lot of great new ideas.
Great. Now, for the people who don't know Aaron,
right?
What do you do?
I do a little bit of everything. I'm an artist. My background is I graduated with a degree in illustration painting from the Ringling College of Art in Florida, and I got into animation very soon out of college. I worked for Disney for 21 years, from 1988 through into the 2000s, and I worked on Beauty and the Beast and Lion King and Aladdin and Pocahontas and Mulan, and I directed a movie called Brother Bear, and so I've kept my animation career going. But what I'm also doing right now, and why I'm at Photoshop World, is that I've picked up my career. I've always been a wildlife nature painter, illustrator.
Oh yeah, I saw some of those images. They were like
Thanks.
photos.
Yeah, thank you. And so, and recently I've discovered working on them, creating them in Photoshop. And it's a really great tool because I can really kind of experiment a lot more than I ever could traditionally. And I can come up with some really cool compositions, ideas, that sort of thing through Photoshop. And I can explore, and then when I create something that I like, then I print those out usually, and I use those as reference for big oil paintings. And so that's kind of what I'm doing nowadays. I'm going back and forth between animation and my fine art working.
And what do you like the best?
It's hard to say. I mean, I think it really depends on my mood. It's like, what do you like, photography, oil painting, or watercolor better? They're all different. They all have their appeal on one day or another. So I love it all. I love the ability to sit down through animation and create life through my hands, through drawing. And
cool, right?
There's something really, really intoxicating about that. But I also like to sit down and create compositions and push paint around and push pixels around in Photoshop. And so I love it all.
It's cool that you say Photoshop, because 21 years for Disney.
Yeah. Meaning
you did cell animation probably.
Yes. Well, it used to be. Technically, there was no cell animation after The Little Mermaid. It was all hand-drawn, but those drawings were then scanned into the computers and colored in the computers, and everything was composited digitally. But that's 21 years of that. Was all that hand-drawn.
When you compare working for, let's say, I run a studio, and it's a smaller studio, and we do everything ourselves. So the DOORhof is always open, for example. We film it, we edit it, and we release it.
Right.
I don't think you're the only one working on, for example, Brother Bear.
No. Matter of fact, I was the leader, me and my co-director, but our crew was 360 people.
How do you manage the creativity in such a big team?
You hire the right people that you trust, and the most talented people you can find. And so I'm not managing 360 people. I'm managing a handful of people who then manage a handful of people who then manage a handful of people. Now, granted, I always keep the door open to anybody that wants to come in and that has a creative idea that can help the story. So we're very, very conscious in keeping a very a clean flow of ideas and exchange of ideas. But there is a lot of checks and balances as far as, if we had that many people, just the two of us controlling, the story with 360 people, it'd be impossible.
And there's never, like, let's say, one person wants Brother Bear to go left, and the other person wants Brother Bear to go right.
Right.
And creative people can be
Yeah.
really easy. Like, if you don't do my idea, I will quit.
Yeah.
Aren't you sometimes more like a manager in those
Sometimes,
cases?
but it's funny because in animation, the biggest thing about animation, because I just said, we've got a crew of 360 people. So what's the first thing you got to do? Well, first of all, you got to be talented, but you also got to be able to collaborate. The people that don't collaborate, they don't make it. They get weeded out really fast. Okay. And so a lot of people assume that we have those issues like you're talking about, but those people, if they do pop up, they're usually a new hire and then they go away. And the ones that survive are the ones that collaborate, and we really do. We become a family. We become a very, very tight family. We spend time outside the studio together, and it's a really close bond. It's very tight.
Now, comparing to the old days, like how long does a movie, like, let's say, for example, if you compare Aladdin or Brother Bear with, let's say, one of the first Disney animations,
right?
Not Beauty and the Beast, but let's say Cinderella.
Yeah, Cinderella, right. How long did...
Because in the old days it took a long time to animate, but nowadays it's also a long period.
It is, and it's
you
funny.
Would say that with
back in the old days they did take a little longer. Their crews were smaller though. But I think Bambi, for instance, took about 7 years. I could be wrong, so don't quote me on it. But even still, Brother Bear, it took 6 years. It took us 6 years to make it.
But you would say with all the automation we have now, all the computers, it should be quicker. Where's that point?
A computer is a big, fancy pencil. That's all it is. And so all that's really changing are the tools, but the time isn't changing. The number of people on the crew isn't changing. It's just the job disciplines and the end product is changing. But really the process is basically the same. A CG, a computer animated film, the process of making that is basically the same as doing a hand-drawn film. And in both instances, the biggest amount of time that is eaten up is the development of that story. We will write and write and write and rewrite for a couple of years before we actually put anything into production. And
you work with what kind of software? Do you write your own software for certain things, or is it all canned software?
Oh, you know what? Back in the early days, it was a lot more proprietary stuff. It was a lot more, Disney wanted to write their own code, and DreamWorks wanted to write their own stuff, and Pixar wanted to write their own stuff. But it's becoming so much more. It's becoming so common to be able to get stuff off the shelf now at a much lower price point that can really do a lot of different things that, I think it's starting to trend that way, because the other thing about making an animated film, when you have that many people on a crew and they're all the top in their field, you're paying for people to be in the top of their field. And so you're burning a lot of money. So these movies, which tend to be, 80 to 90 minutes long, and they average about $1 million to 1.5 million a minute. Wow. You really gotta so you're talking about $100 million film. So you really try to find the places where you can cut corners cost-wise, wherever you can. And so writing new software and that sort of thing is one of those places.
Now, what's the thing you're most proud of? The thing that really stands out, like, this was so incredibly difficult to pull off, or it just happened like magic?
Well, in my animation career, hands down, I was a very young animator on Beauty and the Beast. I think I was 22 years old. And I was lucky enough to be trained by one of the greats in the history of animation. His name is Glenn Keane. He designed The Little Mermaid. He designed Pocahontas and Rapunzel from Tangled, among others. And he designed Beast from Beauty and the Beast. And so he brought me on as this kid, and he said he really liked my animation, and he wanted me to animate the Beast with him. And so he would take scenes, and I would take scenes, along with 5 other people. There was 5 other animators. So there's 6 of us and Glenn. And as this fairly new animator, Glenn handed me this very, very prime, juicy sequence to animate. And I don't know if you know the film very well, but there's a scene where the Beast has been injured in a wolf fight, and he's sitting in front of the fireplace licking his wounds, and Belle is trying to bandage his arm, and he keeps pulling away, and they get into this argument, and they're fighting back and forth and yelling, and he gave that whole section to me to animate as this kid, as this kid. And I remember it took me probably took me about 2 or 3 months to do it, and it was so far outside of my abilities, I felt at the time, and he really nurtured me along the way. And at the end of the picture, it turned out to be, and I think still is, one of the best things that I've ever animated. And it was because, I had this great mentor that trusted me. And so I'll always remember that, and I always try to kind of take that lesson and treat a lot of the younger artists in the same way that I've been able to work with. So that's the most memorable for me.
Cool. Now, if somebody who's now watching wants to start in animation, of
Right.
course they want to start with Pixar or Disney,
Yeah.
and they're just gonna go there and say, I want to learn.
Yeah.
I don't think that's gonna work.
No, and it doesn't happen that way. But there are avenues to get there, and but it's about as likely to be realistic as trying to get into the NBA or trying to get into the NFL playing football. It's tough. And they take just the top talent, so it requires a lot of work. And in Europe, I think probably the best school for animation is Gobelin, and I think that's in France. I can't remember where. And then in the United States, I think the absolute best animation school is Ringling College of Art and Design. Both of those schools are pretty pricey, but you really get what you pay for. And I've recruited and looked at portfolios all over the country at different schools, and hands down, I really feel that Ringling, as far as animation goes, has some of the strongest. They're putting out some of the strongest students nowadays that I've ever seen. They've got a very, very high rate of placement, students getting jobs at studios, and they're getting jobs at major studios. They're getting jobs at DreamWorks, at Disney, at Pixar, and that sort of thing. So my recommendation is shoot for the stars. Go to those schools and soak up all the training you can and work really hard. But now, nowadays with blogs and so many places to get information on the internet, there are ways to train in animation from home on the internet and learn. And you can do that also.
Now, when I look at a portfolio, I look, for example, at lighting, I look at storytelling.
Right.
Because actually, with one picture, you can tell a story.
Right.
And I can imagine that, and I don't know a lot about animation, but I can imagine that with all the tricks nowadays with computers, you can pull off an animation. Let's say you're still in school and you go like, you know what, I still have like 6 months of free time before I run out of money.
Right.
I will start doing an animation of like 3 minutes to put in my portfolio.
Right.
With a computer, and I'm the dumb guy, you can probably pull something off. Now, what will make somebody stand out for you when you look at the portfolio? Let's say a 1 minute clip.
Yeah.
What is something that will catch your eyes? I always tell people, if you think about photography nowadays, there are a gazillion photos out. Now let's dumb that down. It's like a big red line going over the internet, Facebook.
Right.
How do you stand out? And I always tell people, make sure that your reds are a little bit different reds from the other ones. So use tinting, use better storytelling, better poses.
Well, there you go.
But what is it with animation?
With animation,
what do you look for?
the analogy I always use, and I won't say exactly what I say normally, but you can put frosting on a pile of dirt, the best tasting frosting on a pile of dirt, and it's still going to taste like a pile of dirt. Or you can concentrate on getting that cake really, really good, and then put the frosting on. Oh, and it's going to be so delicious. So the point being, the core, you can have the most beautiful looking little animated 3-minute piece of animation, as you were talking about. It can be so beautiful. But if it doesn't have compelling characters, compelling story, if it's character animation that you're going for, which most people are going for, it's what I go for. If you don't have anything to say in a compelling way, then it doesn't matter how beautifully it moves or how cool your lighting is. It's hollow. And so what I look for is I look for storytelling first and foremost. I look for in the actual character animation. If I'm looking to hire an animator, I want to see. Character animation isn't character animation. It's not moving something around. Character animation is thinking. When you can see a character think and change their mind and emote, then that's when they come alive.
So if I would boil it down, it's about expression, gesture, and technique you can always get better in.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. But
soul?
It's really looking for the soul. Yeah, it's finding the soul. And it's digging deep. It's and some of the best absolute best animation I've ever seen, because it really took me to another place, is animation that barely moved at all. But it was just the right expression. It was just the right tilt of the head, or the right blink at the right time, or an inhale or something like that. And it was just, and that to me is done by somebody that's really, really observed life, you know, and they can pick up on it.
Now, when I look at what I have like all the Disney collections, the tin cans, and as an adult, it's a lot of people love Disney, and there's actually from the number ones, by the way, not the sequels or whatever.
Right.
Often I don't like the sequels.
Often, yeah,
but
I agree.
Disney always had something like the characters. Donald Duck, Goofy, Scrooge, one of my favorites.
Right.
And every movie, if you go from Aladdin to Bambi to Beauty and the Beast, they're all awesome.
Yes.
Now, somebody told me, if you like animation, go to anime. And I saw a movie, at that point, they said it's the best movie ever. It's a science fiction movie. I don't remember the name, but I know later you had like Resident Evil.
Right.
And within 2 minutes, you forget that you're watching a cartoon or an animated movie. The techniques are so different, but still somehow I miss that character. It looks real, but it doesn't have soul.
You're
What's
talking
your
to the
opinion?
wrong guy as far as anime goes. I'm not a fan.
No, me neither.
And yeah, exactly. And so to me, you know, once again, going back to animation, animation is, first of all, it's a compelling story, and it's wanting to go on the journey of that story with compelling characters. And compelling characters are created when you can empathize with them, when they're created honestly. When you say, man, I know somebody like that, or that is me at that time in my life, or whatever, and it becomes real. They're not dumbed down. You know, a lot of studios will dumb things down because they think they're creating it for kids.
Or only for the technique.
Yeah,
Look, the
exactly.
hairs float, but there's no soul in it.
There's no soul.
And
it really has to go back to, we have to believe that these characters are real. When I'm directing a movie, or when I'm writing a movie, yes, I'm creating a cartoon, but it's real in my mind. And I can tell you the history of those characters. I can tell you what's going on between them. I can tell you why they're the way they are. I'm their creator.
You have the whole family tree without ever seeing the family.
Exactly. And and you have to get there in order to create something that's compelling, and it's got to be very honest. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
I would like to thank you so very much, Aaron.
Thank
I think
you.
it was very interesting to hear.
Yeah, it's an absolute honor to be here. I really appreciate it. And hopefully we can meet on the other side of the pond at some time.
Oh, yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, that would be
I would
great.
love to get you over there.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you so very much.
I appreciate it.
Okay.
Bye-bye.